Hey, hey, hey. Time for an out of this world story from rSpace. Who needs Broadway when you've got front row seats to the greatest show on earth? Today on rSpace, here's to the brothers who keep us on the straight and narrow, who make us laugh when we want to cry, and who always have the best interests at heart. Because having a brother like that, well, that's something worth celebrating. I caught my brother's fiancée with another man. I'm 27 male, and my brother, Steven, is 29 male. He's the coolest, most sweetest guy. He works so hard for everyone and he's the most generous dude. So I'm in New York for some work and I'm literally walking down the street. If you've been to New York, you know how big it is and how unlikely it is that you'll meet someone you know because there's just too many people and so much going on. So I'm walking and suddenly I see my husband's fiancée, Andrea, arm in arm with some random guy I've never seen before, and they're laughing and all flirty. Now, Andrea and Steven don't live in New York. In fact, we live 3 hours away. And I've met her brothers and her dad and the majority of her family, and I have no idea who this guy is. At first, I'm stunned, and I'm like, ugh, do I say hi or do I pretend I don't see her? But then she catches my eye, and she herself sort of looks flustered, and she quickly unlinks arms with this guy and moves away from him. And then she runs up to me, all excited to see me, and gives me a hug, and then says that this guy is Landon, and they go way back. And I decide to sort of break the ice and crack a joke, but also, I'm not joking, and I say, "Oh, Andrea, you aren't cheating on my brother with this handsome guy, are you?" And they both sort of laugh awkwardly and look at each other, and both say, "No, no, no." And the way they responded raised every sort of red flag there is. It totally rubbed me the wrong way. And then Andrea must have seen my gears just ticking, and she goes, "Landon is gay." And she said it loud enough that the people around us looked at us and gave us some funny looks like, "Why are you announcing that?" And then she goes, "We go way back, and we're just on a little friend's getaway. His parents have a place in the Hamptons, so we're doing a day in New York and then heading up there." And I was like, that's interesting. And she could tell by the look in my eye that I was like, and questioning whether she told Steven or not. Then she goes and says that her and Landon are meeting up with a few vendors to check for locations for their wedding, and Landon knows a designer here, so she's going to check her out for a dress. And I was like, oh, I see. Checking venues without Steven. And she's like, "He knows I'm here. Thank you very much." And I was like, all right, well, pleasure to meet you. I was running late to a meeting and had to kill that conversation, but it just left me with a lot of questions. And so I text Steven as I'm walking to a business meeting, and I'm like, "Oh, I met up with Andrea." And he texts back and he's like, "Oh, that's so funny. What are the odds?" And I'm like, "Yeah, so funny. I met her friend Landon." And he's like, "Landon?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Then he calls me, and I'm just walking into this building, and it's a quick back and forth, but I tell him what happened, and he goes, "Oh, that's strange. She said she was going to see a friend and check out some stuff for the wedding, but she didn't say it was a guy." And I'm like, "I don't know. She said he was gay?" And he's like, I feel like she wouldn't lie about that." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know." And he's like, "Thanks for letting me know." And then that was that. About a year later, they have a dinner rehearsal. It's not in New York. It's in our hometown city. In fact, I hear from Steven after that, Andrea apparently didn't find any venues that she liked in New York, which is hard to imagine because the city is beautiful. And she had apparently told Steven that she didn't even go try on dresses. And she said that I made that part up to Steven. And after that, she was trying to peg me as the bad bro who didn't want Steven to get married. Apparently, Andrea and Steven got into this huge fight when she got back because she didn't tell him that she was seeing a male friend. And he goes, "I don't care who she meets up with, just as long as she doesn't lie about it." He said she can have male friends. He's not trying to stop her from having friends. But it's the fact that she kind of lied about it by omitting it. And the fact that he'd never heard of Landon is suspicious. And I told him he had every right to be suspicious. That's super weird. But yeah, so after that interaction, she started some beef with me with trying to get me out of the wedding party because I accused her of cheating on Steven and whatever, but Steven wasn't having it. He told her that I was just looking out for him and I didn't mean anything by it, but the truth is, I never liked Andrea and I didn't think she was good enough for Steven. She always acted like she had a stick up her butt. Steven likes to say that she had a rough childhood and came from nothing. But I'm like, BS, everyone always uses that as an excuse. But now she's just trying to take Steven for all his hard-earned money. Steven literally built his life from the ground up and he worked hard for everything he has in life. And she just seemed like a lazy, spoiled brat. Sorry, but for real. And to be honest, she spends too much of his money already, and they never even got married. I'm not sure I ever saw her wear the same shoes or purse twice. She even bought herself a pretty white little Mercedes with Steven's money. She even tried to get him to buy a cabin out by the lake for the summer. But for some reason, Steven loved her, and that was that. Couldn't argue with love. So at the rehearsal, they're looking all loved up and whatever. And then I see this Landon guy again, and I walk up to him and shake his hand. I'm like, oh, nice to see you again. What brings you here? And then just as I say that, suddenly Andrea takes the mic and she makes an announcement. And she said that she'd like us all to meet Landon, her bridesman. And we're all sort of looking at each other like, the F? Because the bridesmaid and groomsman have been chosen for literally a year, and thus means the numbers are off. And I also see Steven's reaction, and he looks just as shocked as everyone else. And she walks up to Landon, and they kiss each other, and then start giggling. I'm like, ah. And Steven looks like he's fuming, and also so confused. And he walks up to Andrea and puts his arm around her waist, and then whispers something in her ear. And then they take off into this back room. And the guests are all kind of mumbling to each other like, the F just happened. And her maid of honor comes up to me and she's like, who's Landon? And I'm literally like, her gay friend. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, apparently. And then she tells me that he hit on her earlier and there's no way he's gay. And I'm like, I don't know, that's just what she told me. Then Steven and Andrea come back out and they look like they've been having an argument because they both look visibly flustered. And then they kind of sit through their dinner in silence. Then later I'm talking to Steven and he says that he's never met or heard of Landon before, and then suddenly she's wanting him in the party, and not only that, but no one else has heard of him either. And I'm like, it's not too late to back out of this, or at least postpone. But he's like, I don't think there's a reason to be that drastic, but thanks. And then I'm like, like no one would judge you. And he's like, thanks man, but I'm good. And then he tells me to keep an eye on them and see if anything else happens or if I hear anything else. I'm like, yep, can do, man. Well, it didn't take much longer to find some evidence. So later that night, 2 other guys show up and we literally have no idea who these guys are, but Andrea is standing with them and talking to them for the rest of the night, and her parents go up to Steven and ask him who they are, and say it's kind of rude for her to be ignoring the rest of her guests, especially when some of them have driven so far. Also, I should say that by this point, this wedding was the very next day. And Steven is just like, oh, I don't know, maybe some work friends of Andrea, or maybe friends of this Landon guy. And I'm like, do you want me to kick them out? It's your wedding rehearsal. And he just shrugged it off and was like, I don't have time for that. So after everyone was clearing out of the restaurant and is pretty much gone, I go to the bathroom. And at this specific restaurant, they had individual bathrooms. I don't know if I can even explain this, but instead of 2 giant bathrooms for men and women, these people had like a hallway of rooms with a door and a toilet in each. So I'm walking down this hallway to go find a bathroom, and I hear people going at it in the bathroom. And I'm kind of laughing to myself because my first instinct is that it's this bridesmaid and one of Steven's single groomsmen who were at the rehearsal. And then I finish up and come out, and I'm about to walk down the hallway to get out of there, but then a door in front of me opens and out comes Andrea and Landon, and then one of the random guys that had showed up earlier. And I'm quiet, and my mouth literally dropped to the floor, and they're brushing themselves off and laughing, and she's shushing them, and I'm just standing there like, the hell am I witnessing? But then I have the wits to grab my phone and take some photos. And idiot me had the flash on, so my phone flashes and Andrea sees and turns around. And then I'm like, what the hell were you doing in there? And she's like, what are you talking about? And then I say, you guys were just effing in there. I heard you. And then she's like, no way. Landon's zipper was stuck. That is his best friend, Zach. And Zach says, hey. And I'm like, who are you trying to kid? I heard you all in there effing. And she's like, I don't know what you heard, but it wasn't that. And I'm like, it was exactly that. I can't believe you had the balls to do this to Steven. Not only that, but I can't believe you did this the night before your wedding day. You've got some kind of nerve. And then she says, whatever, you have no idea what you're talking about. And Steven doesn't believe his naive little brother. He doesn't want to listen to you cry wolf anymore. And then she continued to deny that they were doing anything, and she kept saying that Landon is gay and his boyfriend Zach couldn't fix his zipper. And I'm like, that is the worst excuse I've ever heard. So he needed you to fix a zipper, huh? Wait until I tell Steven that. So then she tries to lunge at me because this Zach actually stops her and is holding her back, and I'm laughing my effing butt off. And by then, Steven had left because I guess they took 2 separate cars, so I take off to go to their place before she gets there. I end up showing Steven the photo and telling him what I heard and saw, and he keeps asking me if I'm sure or not, and I'm like, yeah man, I'm very sure. And so he comes up with this idea to play it off like I didn't tell him anything, and that I should instead act like we got into this huge fight. But while guests were coming into the venue, there was going to be a video playing of their baby pictures and like photos of their life and whatever, and Steven said that we should alter this slideshow to humiliate her and give people the truth. So of course, I'm right on board with this. He gives me the file and tells me to alter it and then play along. So I leave and just in time for Andrea to pull up. I get a text that night that she bought the story of Tomorrow Can Go As Planned. So I hop to and alter the presentation. Then the next day I email him the new presentation and act like I've been kicked out of the wedding party. I'm getting texts like, "What's going on? Are you and Steven okay?" But I'm not answering anything. Then I try to put on the best disguise that I can and make my way to the venue via Uber because I don't want anyone recognizing my car. And I see the presentation going on and everyone's looking at their baby photos and all these photos of them having a good time together. And then bam! The picture I took yesterday and a slide that basically says that Andrea is a big cheater and the wedding of Steven and Andrea will not be going ahead as planned, and for everyone to take back their gifts and envelopes and apologizing for wasting their time. I'm hiding in the back and see Andrea's parents frantically calling and other people looking confused and grandparents crying. Boom, baby. Update. Just talked to Steven and he said that he did some digging. With some back and forth with Andrea, who vigorously denied everything and threatened to sue me for God only knows, she finally admitted to cheating on Steven with Landon for just over a year now. She said that once she was married, she thought she could convince Steven into joining this poly relationship with Landon and Zach, and this third mysterious guy who had a girlfriend and they were looking for love. She said she met Landon over Tinder. Him and Zach were looking for a third, and while they romped, she said she learned so much about herself and life and fell in love. She said she didn't want to give up Steven because she also loved him. She tried really hard to convince him to stay. This totally broke Steven. I mean, it takes a lot for him to get embarrassed or hurt or angry, but this definitely broke him. He's not usually the vengeful type, but this did it. The car was technically his since it was actually under his name, like the payments, and he had to help her sign for the car. So it just became this legal battle because they had already been claiming taxes as common law. Not only that, but he asked for the ring back too, and she wasn't going to give it back, so that was a big thing. Later on, she did actually try to sue me, but it got nowhere. She also tried to get a restraining order against me, but she basically got laughed at. Yeah, I guess she thought she could have it all and thought Steven would be into one big happy family. She tried to convince him that it would be good for him and it would make their relationship stronger, and then she did a bunch of crying and sobbing. She even came to my house and was banging on my door telling me that I ruined her life and ruined what was best for Steven, and that I just don't want to see my brother happy, and started saying things like I love my brother a little too much more than a brother. But by then, everyone knew she was nuts, and then our dad actually stepped up and admitted that he was glad the wedding didn't go through because he had a bad feeling about her. And Steven told us to never hold back on him again like that, and if we ever have a gut feeling again, to just save him the trouble. But yeah, been a wild ride, and turns out New York is smaller than I thought. Catching your brother's fiancé red-handed in the Big Apple? I didn't see that one coming. Like finding a needle in a haystack the size of Central Park. And the way Andrea tried to brush off her sketchy behavior with the old "he's gay" excuse? Classic deflection tactic, but let's be real. It's about as believable as claiming Times Square is a quiet neighborhood. Turning the wedding rehearsal into a scene from Jerry Springer? Bravo. Steven hit the sibling jackpot when he got you as a brother. Through thick and thin, you've been his rock, his confidant, and his guardian angel in disguise. From the moment you spotted Andrea's shenanigans on the streets of New York to the epic showdown at the wedding rehearsal, you've had his back like a loyal sidekick in a superhero comic. You've gone above and beyond the call of brotherly duty, not just by uncovering Andrea's deception, but by standing firm in your convictions and protecting Steven's heart from further harm. May Steven always know just how lucky he is to have you by his side. What would you have done? Have you ever had to stick up for a sibling? Share your stories with us in the comments below. Thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you soon.